So, hello everybody. I just wanted to introduce you to the concept of what a derivative is. So, I brought up some interesting documents that you may find very interesting. And the first one is, of course, called as you can see, a primer on derivatives. And it originated from the Competitive Enterprise Institute. It was part of their financial innovation project, and it was written by Christopher Culp, who's written many articles on the topic. This was done in 1995, so it's quite old, but he's a senior fellow in financial regulation at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. You can see it's about 24 years old, but it's still relevant. The other thing I wanted to say is I have other, now he's not going to emphasize regulation. Let me read some of this to you so you get the idea. What follows is a non-mathematical, non-technical primer on derivatives for the uninitiated. One misconception with which many readers will proceed is that derivatives are hopelessly cryptic, complex, and arcane. Though by no means exhaustive, this primer from the CEI is designed to dispel that myth by exploring several aspects of derivatives: what they are, how they work, and who uses them. A primary mission of CEI is to disseminate information that will allow public policy to be made on the best informed basis. It is hoped that readers of this primer will indeed be one step closer to understanding why the current political rumblings in Washington, about the need to further regulate derivatives are ill-conceived and may drive industry in which the United States has significant competitive advantages to friendlier foreign shores. Now, here's where he has a couple disclaimers. It should be noted that three broad subjects deliberately have been omitted from this primer. First, you will not see a discussion of proposed regulatory and legislative changes. The intention of this primer is to have a shelf life beyond most of those proposals anyway. Second, you will not see a discussion of why a whole host of firms supposedly lost money on derivatives in 1993 and 1994, except to explode the myth that these losses were caused largely by derivatives. Though a few were, no useful proposal would be served in discussing them here. Finally, you will not see a guide to managing risks of derivatives. Many people have written on these three issues elsewhere, and discussing them here is beyond the scope of this publication. So, the other thing I want to mention to you is there's another person who writes extensively on derivative regulation, and I'd like to show her to you. And, well, she was here. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, hold on. She's right over here. And her name is Roberta Romano. And she is a professor of law at Yale, as you can see. And if you look down here, some of her CV, and she's heavily, some of her studies revolve around the regulation of securities markets and financial instruments and institutions. Okay, so if you want to, she's got a lot of papers up online. If you're interested in financial regulation of derivatives and securities, you should get some of her papers. And I have some, so I will be more than happy to, give you some if you need any. All right, so I just wanted to show you that. And let me see if I can find some of her publications here. So she's got a book that was written with someone else, Financial Regulation After the Global Financial Crisis, U.S. and China Perspective. The Advantage of Competitive Federalism for Securities Regulation. And The Genius of American Corporate Law. So there's others here, but she has many articles she's written. And you can see them all here. So if you'd like any, and like for instance, does the Sarbanes-Oxley Act have a future? Right, written in 2009. So you can see she's got many publications. Corporate lawsuits in the United States, impact on share prices. So she majors in regulation. So I just wanted you to see that. All right, so I'll get rid of that. So let's just look at a little bit out of Mr. Culp's paper here, and we'll go through this a little. Although criticized often and considered unfathomably complex, derivatives are relatively straightforward financial contracts that are not inherently riskier than other, more traditional financial instruments. Derivatives are simply contracts created by the negotiation of two parties that derive their value from some underlying asset price, reference rate, or index level. This primer explores the mechanics, benefits, risks, and regulation of the two types of derivative contracts, those which are traded on organized exchanges and those which are privately negotiated. Now, the privately negotiated are often referred to as over-the-counter or OTC contracts. And he's going to go into some other conclusions. Derivatives are not hopelessly complex, right? And the essential economics behind most common derivatives transactions can be explained with a minimum use of either terminology or mathematics. Once the basic principles are grasped for the two building blocks of derivatives, forwards and options, all other derivatives can be viewed simply as various combinations of these two product types. Understanding the two building blocks of derivatives also provide new insights into more traditional financial products. Derivatives can provide significant benefits to all sorts of institutions, including banks, thrifts, institutional investors, government-sponsored enterprises, and retail investors. Using derivatives can enable institutions to lower their funding costs, diversify their funding risks, manage the risks of asset and liability portfolios, change their exposure to an existing product or asset market at low cost, manage business expansions, and exploit informational advantages. Derivatives also benefit the economy and financial system by promoting sound risk management policies and procedures to derivatives participants that are applicable to their whole institutions. Number 3. The risks of using derivatives are not inherently different from the risks of using more traditional financial products, such as mortgage loans. With proper risk management procedures and internal controls, there is no reason a priori why corporations that use derivatives should be subjected to any great financial risk than those which do not. Exchange-traded and privately negotiated derivatives, otherwise known as OTC, as I mentioned, are fundamentally similar products, but they also exhibit important complementarities and differences. These two types of derivatives have evolved side by side and coexist for a reason. They are both fundamentally derivative contracts, but the risk and uses of the two products can differ dramatically. It is appropriate to differentiate between them accordingly. All right, I'll do a part 2 on this because I'm only allowed to upload 15 minutes, and I'll do it in 10-minute chunks. Okay, there'll be more. There'll be a part 2. This is part 1.